My name is Catherine Mitchell, but everyone calls me Kate. I am 35 years old, and to most people, I look like an ordinary woman. Little did my family know that beneath my deliberately modest appearance that day, I was actually the CEO of Skyline Hotels, including the very establishment where my father was celebrating his birthday. I had received the invitation weeks ago and decided to attend without revealing my success. After years of estrangement, I was nervous, but hopeful about reconnecting with my family. I never expected to be stopped at the door. Before I dive into what happened next, drop a comment letting me know where you are watching from and hit that subscribe button if you enjoy stories about sweet, unexpected revenge. I grew up in a relatively comfortable middle-class household in Chicago. My parents, Richard and Maria Mitchell, provided a stable home for me until I was 14. That was when everything changed. My mother passed away from cancer, leaving my father devastated and me without my strongest supporter. 2 years after Mom died, Dad met Eleanor at a company event. She was polished, sophisticated, and came with 2 children of her own, Amanda and James, who were 13 and 15 at the time. I was 16 and still grieving my mother when Eleanor moved into our home with her children. From the beginning, Eleanor had different values than what I was raised with. My mother had taught me that character, kindness, and hard work were what defined a person. Eleanor, however, measured worth by designer labels, luxury cars, and social connections. "Catherine, darling," she would say while eyeing my simple clothes, "you really should put more effort into your appearance. First impressions are everything in this world." Amanda quickly adopted her mother's attitude, turning up her nose at everything from my choice of friends to my involvement in community service, rather than country club activities. James followed his sister's lead, though sometimes I caught glimpses of discomfort in his eyes when Amanda was particularly cruel. Despite the tension at home, I excelled academically and earned a scholarship to study business administration at the University of Chicago. My father was proud, but Eleanor seemed almost disappointed that she wouldn't need to fund my education. "Business administration?" Amanda snickered during my graduation dinner. "So you can work as some corporate secretary?" I ignored her and focused on my goals. While my classmates sought prestigious corporate positions after graduation, I made a decision that baffled my family. I took an entry-level position at a hotel, working at the front desk. All that education to check people in and out? What a waste. Eleanor commented when I shared my new job at a family dinner. What my family failed to understand was that I had a vision. I wanted to learn the hospitality industry from the ground up. My business degree gave me the theoretical knowledge, but I needed practical experience in every aspect of hotel operations before I could build something of my own. For 2 years, I worked at the front desk, then moved to housekeeping management, then food and beverage coordination. My family saw only menial jobs, not realizing I was gaining invaluable insights into guest experiences and operational efficiencies. "Still folding sheets, Catherine?" James would ask whenever we saw each other, which became increasingly rare as I distanced myself from their toxic attitudes. By the time I was 28, I had saved enough from my increasingly better positions and secured investors who believed in my vision. I purchased my first small hotel, a struggling property that I transformed through careful renovation and exceptional service standards. The hotel turned profitable within 18 months, allowing me to acquire a second property. By 32, I had built Skyline Hotels into a respected boutique chain with 15 locations across the country, known for their personalized service and elegant efficiency. Throughout this journey, my contact with my family dwindled to holiday cards and occasional phone calls with my father. Eleanor had effectively turned him into a social climber, always reaching for connections with the wealthy and influential. The cruel irony was that I was becoming exactly the kind of successful person they admired, but they were too blinded by their preconceptions to see it. I made a conscious decision not to flaunt my success. After being belittled for my career choices for so long, I wanted to be valued for who I was, not what I owned. Only my closest friends knew that the modest woman in simple but quality clothes was actually a hotel magnate with a net worth in the millions. When the invitation to my father's 65th birthday party arrived, I was surprised. It had been nearly 2 years since I had seen any of my family in person. The celebration was to be held at the Grand Skyline Chicago, one of my most recent acquisitions and the flagship of my Midwest operations. I smiled at the irony as I read the embossed invitation. My stepsister had unwittingly chosen my own hotel for their celebration, likely attracted by its growing reputation for elegance without ostentation, exactly the balance I had worked to achieve. After a week of consideration, I decided to attend. Despite everything, Richard was still my father, and some part of me hoped that perhaps age had softened the family dynamics. I would go as just Kate, not as the CEO of Skyline Hotels. If there was to be any reconciliation, I wanted it to be genuine, not influenced by my financial success. Little did I know that this decision would lead to one of the most dramatic confrontations of my life, and finally force my family to see me for who I truly was. The morning of my father's birthday celebration, I stood before my closet contemplating what to wear. My walk-in closet contained designer pieces that would have impressed even Eleanor. But that wasn't the impression I wanted to make. After careful consideration, I selected a simple navy blue dress, well-made but not ostentatious, paired with modest jewelry and comfortable yet elegant flats. As I applied minimal makeup, my phone rang. It was Sophia, my best friend since college and one of the few people who knew the full extent of my success. "Let me guess," she said when I answered. "You are deliberately underdressing to avoid showing up your status-obsessed family." I laughed. Not underdressing, just not broadcasting my net worth through my outfit. There is a difference. Kate, I still don't understand why you're hiding your success from them after all this time. You worked incredibly hard to build Skyline. Why not walk in there as the powerhouse you are? I sighed, setting down my mascara. It is not about hiding, Sophia. It is about giving them one last chance to see me for me, not for my bank account. After that disaster of a dinner 3 years ago, they don't deserve another chance. The memory of that night flashed vividly in my mind. It had been my father's birthday then too, a smaller celebration at an upscale restaurant. Amanda had spent the evening pointing out all the important people dining around us, dropping names of executives and local celebrities. When conversation turned to my career, I had simply mentioned I was in hotel management, not specifying that I owned the establishments. Just management? No ambition for ownership. Eleanor had asked with thinly veiled disappointment. Some people simply are not meant for the upper echelons, Amanda added with a smirk. The conversation had quickly moved on to James's new position at a prestigious law firm, the pride in my father's eyes making it clear where his priorities lay. I had left early, making an excuse about work, and limited my contact with them since. Maybe they don't deserve another chance. I admitted to Sophia, but my father is getting older. If there is ever going to be any healing, it needs to start somewhere. Just promise me you'll stand up for yourself if they start in on you again. I promise. Besides, there is a certain poetry to them unknowingly celebrating in my hotel. Even if they never know, I will. After saying goodbye to Sophia, I finished getting ready and called my driver. While I could have easily driven myself, I decided the small luxury of a town car would be my private acknowledgement of my own success. During the drive downtown, I gazed out at the Chicago skyline, the afternoon sun glinting off glass and steel. When we passed another of my properties, the Lakeview skyline, I smiled at the discreet logo I had personally designed. A stylized S that represented both skyline and success to me. "We're about 15 minutes from the Grand, Ms. Mitchell," my driver informed me. "Traffic is light today." "Thank you, David. How's your son doing at college?" David beamed in the rearview mirror. "Dean's List his first semester, thanks to that scholarship program you started for employees' children." "That is wonderful news. His hard work earned that spot. The scholarship just removed obstacles." This was the kind of success that meant the most to me, making real differences in people's lives. Not the accumulation of luxury goods that seemed to be my stepsister's measure of achievement. As we approached the Grand Skyline Chicago, my stomach tightened with anticipation. The gleaming 30-story building had been an ambitious acquisition just 11 months ago, but its prime location and solid bones had made it perfect for the Skyline treatment. A complete renovation with my signature blend of modern amenities and classic comfort. David pulled up to the entrance, where uniformed staff stood ready to assist guests. None of them recognized me immediately, which was by design. I visited my properties regularly but usually met only with management, allowing the frontline staff to focus on guests rather than impressing the CEO. "Have a wonderful evening, Ms. Mitchell," David said as a valet opened my door. "Thank you. Enjoy your weekend with your family." I walked through the elegant lobby, noting with satisfaction the fresh flower arrangements and the efficient movement of staff. Thomas, the assistant manager, did a double-take as I passed the front desk, but professionally maintained his composure, giving me only a respectful nod. I had hired him personally from a competitor, impressed by his attention to detail. Taking the elevator to the mezzanine level where the private dining rooms were located, I observed other guests, all dressed much more elaborately than I was. The women wore designer dresses and statement jewelry, while the men were in tailored suits with expensive watches glinting at their wrists. Eleanor's influence on the guest list was obvious. I paused in a quiet corner of the mezzanine, taking a moment to center myself. Through the large windows, Chicago spread out before me. A city of opportunity that had allowed a determined young woman to build something meaningful. Whatever happened with my family tonight, I had that accomplishment to hold on to. With a deep breath, I headed toward the lakeshore room, where my father's celebration was being held. Outside the entrance, a small table had been set up where a young woman checked names against the guest list. Beyond her, I could see the elaborate decorations and about 40 guests already mingling inside. Just as I approached the table, I saw Amanda step out of the room, champagne flute in hand, her eyes widening as she noticed me walking toward them. Her expression shifted from surprise to something harder, more calculating. And I knew immediately that this reunion would not be the reconciliation I had hoped for. "Catherine?" Amanda's voice carried a note of disbelief as she intercepted me before I could reach the check-in table. "What are you doing here?" I smiled, determined to start the evening positively despite her cold reception. "Hello, Amanda. I was invited to Dad's birthday celebration. You look well." My stepsister was dressed in a designer gown that probably cost more than what most people earned in a month, her neck and wrists adorned with glittering diamonds. She looked me up and down, taking in my simple navy dress with barely concealed disdain. "I am surprised you could make it," she said, not moving from her position blocking my path. "These events can be so expensive." "Dad's birthday is important to me," I replied evenly. "I would not miss it." Amanda took a sip of her champagne, her eyes never leaving mine. "Things have changed since you last saw the family, Catherine. We move in different circles now." Before I could respond, James appeared beside his sister, his expression guarded as he recognized me. Unlike Amanda, who seemed to delight in confrontation, James had always been more uncomfortable with direct conflict. "Kate," he acknowledged with a slight nod. "This is unexpected. I received an invitation," I explained, beginning to feel the first stirrings of unease. "From Dad's secretary, I assumed." Amanda laughed, a brittle sound that drew glances from nearby guests. "That was meant as a courtesy. Catherine, no one actually expected you to show up." I felt a flush of embarrassment but maintained my composure. "I am here to celebrate with Dad. That is all. Look around you." Amanda gestured toward the elegantly dressed guests visible inside the room. "This is a gathering of successful people. Dad's colleagues, our friends, people who have achieved something in life." The deliberate emphasis on successful stung, but I had long ago learned not to show when Amanda's barbs hit their mark. "Success is measured in many ways, Amanda. Not in our world," she countered. "And frankly, this venue is probably out of your price range. The Grand Skyline is one of the most exclusive hotels in Chicago now." I bit back the ironic response that rose to my lips. "I am sure I can manage one evening. Now, if you will excuse me, I would like to wish Dad a happy birthday." As I attempted to step around her, Amanda moved to block my path more directly. James hovered awkwardly at her side, looking uncomfortable, but making no move to intervene. This is embarrassing for everyone involved, Amanda continued. Her voice low but intense. You show up looking like that, among all these important people? What do you even do these days? Still working at hotels, checking in guests and changing sheets? I work in hotel management, I replied simply, sticking to the same partial truth I had been telling them for years. Right, she scoffed. Well, this particular hotel has standards. The guests here paid $2,000 per plate for this charity event. That detail surprised me. The invitation had mentioned nothing about a charity component or such an exorbitant cost. I wondered if this was Amanda's exaggeration or something my father's secretary had failed to mention. I was invited by Dad, I repeated firmly. If there is a cost issue, I am happy to cover my attendance. James finally spoke up, his tone attempting conciliation though his words were anything but. Kate, maybe it would be better if you connected with Dad another time. In a more appropriate setting. The implication was clear, I did not belong in their sophisticated world. Before I could respond, I noticed Eleanor approaching. Her expression a practiced mask of polite concern. Catherine, what a surprise, my stepmother said, air kissing near my cheek without actually making contact. We did not think you would come all this way. It is Dad's 65th birthday, I said simply. Of course I came. Eleanor exchanged a look with Amanda that spoke volumes. It is very thoughtful. But perhaps not practical. This is really more of a business event than a family gathering. Richard is networking with some very important people. I will not disrupt his networking, I assured her. I just want to wish him happy birthday. The thing is, Eleanor continued with false sympathy. The guest list was finalized weeks ago. The seating arrangements are already set. I am sure there is room for one more chair at a family table, I countered, my patience beginning to wear thin. Amanda stepped closer, dropping all pretense of civility. We only want successful people here, she sneered, blocking the doorway more firmly. This restaurant is too expensive for you. You do not belong here. I glanced past her into the room, searching for my father among the guests. I spotted him near the bar, laughing with a group of men in expensive suits, seemingly oblivious to the confrontation occurring at the entrance to his party. Did Dad say he did not want me here? I asked directly, meeting Amanda's gaze. A flicker of something, perhaps discomfort, crossed her face before she replied. He understands the importance of maintaining a certain image. Your presence would be out of place. The hurt was sharp and immediate. After all these years, my father still allowed his wife and stepchildren to dictate who was worthy of being in his life. I had given him this one last chance. And it appeared he had failed the test without even knowing it was being administered. I see, I said quietly, dignity the only defense I had in that moment. Security can show you out if necessary, Eleanor added, her voice honeyed with false concern. To avoid any uncomfortable scene. As if on cue, Amanda raised her hand to signal to someone across the room. We need assistance here. She called out, loud enough to draw attention from nearby guests. I stood my ground, a lifetime of being diminished by these people finally reaching its breaking point. You really have not changed at all, have you? Still measuring people's worth by their possessions and connections. And you are still the same disappointment, Amanda retorted. The daughter who never lived up to her potential, working menial jobs and showing up underdressed to embarrass the family. I noticed a security guard approaching from inside the room. His expression professional but determined. In that moment, I felt a complex mix of emotions, anger and hurt, but also a strange sense of calm. Whatever happened next would finally bring this chapter of my life to its conclusion, one way or another. The security guard who approached was Michael Rodriguez, a former police officer I had personally hired 6 months ago after he protected a guest during an attempted robbery in the hotel lobby. He was one of my most valued employees, known for his professionalism and discretion. As Michael reached our small group, his eyes widened slightly in recognition before his training took over. He straightened his posture and addressed me directly. Madam CEO, is everything all right here? He asked, his respectful tone a stark contrast to the disdain I had been facing from my family. The effect of his words was immediate and profound. Amanda's mouth fell open, her champagne glass tilting dangerously in her slackened grip. James blinked rapidly, looking between Michael and me with growing confusion. Eleanor's perfectly composed facade cracked, uncertainty flooding her features. Everything is fine, Michael, I replied calmly. Just a small misunderstanding with my family. Your family? Amanda sputtered, finding her voice. What did he just call you? Before I could respond, Thomas, the assistant manager I had noticed earlier, hurried over to investigate the commotion. Is there a problem here, Mr. Rodriguez? He asked, then froze as he recognized me. Ms. Mitchell. We had no idea you would be visiting today. It was a last-minute decision, Thomas, I explained. I am here for my father's birthday celebration. Thomas looked momentarily confused, glancing between me and my still shocked family members. Of course. Would you like me to inform the restaurant manager that you are here? We can arrange for your usual table if this event is not to your satisfaction. Eleanor found her voice next. There must be some mistake. This is Catherine Mitchell, my stepdaughter. She works in hotel management. Thomas smiled politely, but with obvious confusion. Yes, Ms. Mitchell is in hotel management as the chief executive officer and owner of Skyline Hotels, including the Grand Skyline Chicago. The silence that followed was deafening. Amanda's champagne glass finally tilted too far, spilling its contents onto the expensive carpet. No one moved to clean it up, all eyes fixed on me. This is ridiculous, Amanda finally declared, though her voice lacked its earlier conviction. She cannot possibly own this hotel. She is lying to you or you are mistaken. Michael, ever the professional, maintained his neutral expression. Ma'am, I can assure you that Ms. Mitchell is indeed the owner and CEO of the entire Skyline Hotel chain. She personally hired me 6 months ago after the incident with the Goldstein family. I remembered that day clearly. The Goldsteins, loyal guests at several of my properties, had been accosted in the lobby by a desperate man demanding their jewelry. Michael, then working his second week on the job, had defused the situation without violence, protecting the guests while also getting the would-be robber the mental health assistance he needed. I had commended Michael personally and created a security training program based on his approach. This is some kind of elaborate prank, James suggested, though he sounded uncertain. Catherine, what is going on? I took a deep breath, weighing my options. This was not how I had planned for my family to learn about my success, but their behavior had forced my hand. The years of condescension and exclusion had finally reached their natural conclusion. It is not a prank, James, I said quietly. I own the Skyline Hotel chain. All 23 properties across the country, including this one where you chose to hold Dad's party. Eleanor's calculating mind was already reassessing the situation, her expression shifting from shock to a sort of speculative interest that I found more offensive than her previous disdain. All these years, she began, her tone suddenly warm. You never mentioned your true position. We had no idea you had achieved such success. Would it have mattered? I asked simply. Would knowing I had money and status have changed how you treated me as a person? My question hung in the air, uncomfortably direct. Amanda, never one to remain silent for long, attempted to regain control of the situation. Well, this is certainly a surprise, she said with a forced laugh. You should have told us, Catherine. Family should not keep secrets from each other. Like the secret that my invitation was just a courtesy, with no expectation that I would actually attend? I countered. James at least had the grace to look ashamed. The growing commotion had finally attracted attention from inside the party, and several guests were now watching the drama unfold with undisguised interest. Among them, I spotted my father making his way toward the entrance, confusion evident on his face. What is happening out here? He asked as he reached our group. Catherine? When did you arrive? Just now, Dad. I replied. I was having a discussion with Amanda and Eleanor about whether I should join your celebration. My father looked bewildered. Of course you should join us. You are my daughter. The simple statement, which should have been a given, struck me deeply after the reception I had received. My father glanced around at the hotel staff who were still hovering nearby with obvious deference toward me. "Is everything all right?" he asked, sensing the tension. "Mr. Mitchell," Thomas began. "We're honored to have your celebration at Ms. Mitchell's flagship property. If there is anything additional you need for your event, please do not hesitate to ask." My father's confusion deepened. "Catherine? What does he mean by your property?" Before I could answer, Eleanor placed a hand on my father's arm, her entire demeanor transformed. "Richard. It seems Catherine has been quite modest about her accomplishments. Apparently, she owns this entire hotel chain." The look of astonishment on my father's face would have been comical under different circumstances. "You own Skyline Hotels? All of them? But you always said you were in hotel management." "I am in hotel management, Dad," I replied with a small smile. "As the CEO, managing hotels is exactly what I do." With the initial shock wearing off, my father guided me into the party room. His hand tentatively on my elbow as if I might disappear if he did not maintain contact. Amanda, James, and Eleanor followed, their earlier hostility replaced by stunned silence. Guests turned to stare as our unusual procession made its way through the crowd. "I need a moment with my daughter," my father announced to no one in particular, leading me to a quiet corner of the room. His eyes searched my face with new awareness. "Catherine, why did you never tell me about any of this?" The question was fair, but complex. I chose my words carefully. "When I started building my company, you were all so dismissive of my career choices. After a while, it just seemed easier not to correct your assumptions." He shook his head in disbelief. "But this is incredible success. You own the Grand Skyline? And 22 other hotels? How long has this been going on?" "I bought my first property 8 years ago," I explained. "It was small, nothing like this place." Each success led to another opportunity, and eventually, Skyline Hotels became what it is today. 8 years, he repeated, the math clearly happening in his head. "So even 3 years ago, at my birthday dinner when Amanda and Eleanor were. When they were mocking my career in hotel management." "Yes, I already owned 5 properties by then." My father's face fell. "I never stopped them. I just sat there and let them belittle you." "Yes. You did," I acknowledged, the hurt still fresh despite my success. "That is partly why I kept my distance these past few years." Before he could respond, Amanda approached. Her recovery from shock now complete and replaced by a transparent attempt to rewrite history. "Catherine, this is just amazing," she gushed, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "My sister. The hotel magnate. I always knew you would do something extraordinary." The blatant lie might have been amusing if it was not so offensive. I raised an eyebrow but said nothing, forcing her to fill the uncomfortable silence. "We have so much catching up to do," she continued. "You must tell us all about your company. Perhaps we could have lunch next week at your club?" "I do not belong to a club, Amanda," I replied calmly. "I prefer to spend my free time with genuine friends who valued me before they knew my net worth." Her smile faltered slightly. "Of course. I just meant somewhere nice where we could really talk. We are family, after all." "Are we?" I asked quietly. 20 minutes ago, you were calling security to remove me from this room." My father looked startled. "Amanda did what?" James approached, perhaps sensing that Amanda was making things worse. Unlike his sister, there was something in his expression that suggested genuine regret. "Kate, I owe you an apology," he said, surprising me with what sounded like sincerity. "The things we said out there, the way we have treated you over the years, it was wrong. Not because you turned out to be successful, but because no one should treat family that way regardless of their career or wealth." His words hit closer to the truth than anything else I had heard from my family in years. I nodded acknowledgement, but was not ready to offer easy absolution. By now, Eleanor had joined our group, her social instincts kicking in as she realized many of the influential guests were watching this family drama with keen interest. "Perhaps we should continue this private discussion another time," she suggested smoothly. "Today is about celebrating Richard's birthday." "You are right, Eleanor," I agreed. "This is Dad's day. My father, however, seemed unable to move past the revelations. All these years, I had no idea. When you said you were working in hotels, I pictured you at a reception desk, not running an entire company. That was the image everyone preferred to believe. I noted. It fit with your expectations. But the work you must have done, the challenges you must have overcome, he continued, genuine wonder in his voice. Starting with nothing and building all this. Not with nothing, I corrected him. I had my education, which you helped provide. And I had the example of hard work that you showed me growing up. Something in his eyes softened at that. Your mother would have been so proud of you, Catherine. She always said you had a special kind of determination. The mention of my mother, rare in this household dominated by Eleanor, touched something deep within me. I think about her every day, I admitted, especially when making tough decisions. Our moment was interrupted by the event coordinator announcing that dinner would be served shortly. As guests began moving toward their assigned tables, the awkwardness of my unexpected presence became practical as well as emotional. We did not plan for you to attend, Eleanor admitted, her tone making it clear that this was my problem to solve, not hers. That is easily remedied, I replied, catching Thomas's eye and giving him a subtle nod. Within minutes, the staff had rearranged a table, adding a place setting with such efficiency that it appeared it had always been meant for one more guest. I noted with irony that I was now seated at the family table, directly across from Amanda, whose expression fluctuated between calculation and discomfort. As the first course was served, conversations around us resumed, though many guests continued to cast curious glances in our direction. The story of the owner being nearly turned away from her own hotel by her family was too delicious a piece of gossip to ignore. Catherine, Eleanor began once we were all seated. You must tell us about your company. How many people work for you? Skyline employs over 2,000 people across all properties, I replied, though I prefer to think of it as 2,000 people who work with me, not for me. And the annual revenue, she pressed, never one for subtlety. Eleanor, my father admonished, embarrassed by her directness. It is fine, Dad, I assured him, turning back to my stepmother. Skyline Hotels is privately held, so we do not disclose our financials publicly. But I can tell you that each of our properties is profitable, and we reinvest substantially in both our facilities and our people. Throughout dinner, I found myself sharing more details about my company, my voice growing animated as I spoke about our employee education program and the sustainable practices we had implemented across all properties. For the first time, my family was actually listening to me speak about my career with genuine interest, though I harbored no illusions about the reasons for their newfound attention. You know, Amanda said during dessert, I have several friends on charity boards who would love to have someone like you involved. The connections could be valuable for your business. I already serve on the boards of 3 organizations, I informed her, focused on education access, homeless services, and sustainable hospitality practices. But those are not the influential circles that could really elevate your profile, she insisted. I am not interested in elevating my profile, Amanda, I replied honestly. The work itself, and its impact, is what matters to me. As the evening progressed, I observed the complex dynamics playing out at our table. Eleanor was clearly recalculating my value to the family and how she might benefit from it. Amanda fluctuated between attempts to establish herself as my supportive sister and thinly veiled suggestions about how my wealth might be useful to her social climbing. James remained quieter, occasionally meeting my eyes with what seemed like genuine remorse for his past behavior. And my father, he watched me throughout the evening with a mixture of pride, regret, and confusion, as if seeing me clearly for the first time in many years and trying to reconcile the successful businesswoman before him with the daughter he had allowed to drift away. As dinner concluded and guests began to mingle again, I found myself approached by various business associates of my father, now eager to connect with the revealed owner of Skyline Hotels. I handled these interactions with professional courtesy, though it was clear that my presence had transformed from an embarrassment to an asset in the eyes of many attendees. After one such conversation, my father gently guided me toward the terrace doors. Could we step outside for a moment? I would like to speak with you privately. The terrace overlooked the Chicago River, the city lights reflecting off the water in a dazzling display. We stood in silence for a moment, both gathering thoughts after the evening's unexpected turn of events. I owe you an apology, Catherine, he finally said, his voice heavy with regret. Not just for tonight, but for years of failing to stand up for you. Why did you not? I asked directly. It was the question that had haunted me through years of family dinners where I was subtly or not so subtly diminished. He sighed deeply, looking older than his 65 years in that moment. After your mother died, I was lost. Eleanor brought structure back to my life, but it came with certain expectations. Over time, it seemed easier to go along with her view of things than to challenge it. Even when that view dismissed your own daughter? He winced at my directness. I told myself you were strong. Like your mother. That you did not need my protection the way Eleanor needed my support. The explanation was both illuminating and deeply disappointing. I was still your daughter, Dad. Your only child from your first marriage. I needed you to value me, even if I did not show it. I know that now, he admitted. Seeing you tonight, learning about what you have built on your own. I am so proud of you, Catherine, and ashamed of myself for not seeing your potential all along. As we talked, he revealed something I had not known. My health has not been good this past year. Minor heart problems, nothing immediately life-threatening, but it makes a man think about his legacy, about making amends while there is still time. Why did you not tell me about your heart issues? I asked, concerned. Eleanor thought it best to keep it private until after treatment was completed. She can be very protective of appearances. The revelation clarified certain things. So this birthday celebration was not really your idea, was it? He gave a rueful smile. Eleanor said it would be good for me to see friends and colleagues, but between us, I would have preferred a quiet dinner with just family. A family that apparently did not include me, based on Amanda's reaction to my arrival, I noted. He had the grace to look ashamed. The formal invitation was Eleanor's doing. I assumed you would not want to come, given how things have been between us. I should have reached out personally. Our conversation was interrupted by Eleanor, who approached with a concerned expression that did not quite reach her eyes. Richard, darling, you should not be out in the night air too long. Doctor's orders. The way she glanced between us made it clear she was concerned about what we might be discussing rather than my father's health. My father, perhaps emboldened by our conversation, surprised me by standing his ground. I am fine, Eleanor. Catherine and I are having an important conversation that is long overdue. Eleanor's perfect smile faltered momentarily before she recovered. Of course, but several of the board members were asking for you. It would be rude not to circulate. Tell them I will be in shortly, he replied firmly. My daughter takes precedence right now. The brief flash of displeasure that crossed Eleanor's face before she nodded and retreated spoke volumes about the dynamics I had observed throughout my life. My father had rarely, if ever, contradicted her wishes so directly in my presence. That was new, I commented after she left. He smiled sadly. Perhaps seeing you stand your ground tonight inspired me to find a bit of my own backbone. When we eventually returned to the party, I noticed Amanda engaged in animated conversation with a small group of guests, gesturing in my direction occasionally. As I approached, I could hear her voice, pitched to carry just the right distance. Catherine has always been so modest about her success. Classic Mitchell family trait, really. We are all so proud of what she has accomplished. The transparent attempt to rewrite our family history might have been amusing if it was not so blatantly false. One of the guests, a woman in an elegant red dress, turned to me with interest. Your sister was just telling us about your amazing company. She mentioned you two have always been close. I met Amanda's eyes, seeing the challenge there. She was daring me to contradict her and create a scene that would embarrass the family. Amanda and I have a complex relationship, I replied diplomatically. Like many siblings, we have taken different paths in life. The careful response satisfied the guest without endorsing Amanda's fiction. My stepsister's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Across the room, I observed James in conversation with my hotel's general manager, his body language suggesting genuine interest rather than the opportunistic networking his sister was engaged in. When our eyes met, he gave me a small nod that conveyed something like respect. Later, as he approached the bar where I was ordering a mineral water, he spoke quietly. I meant what I said earlier, Kate. I am truly sorry for how we have treated you over the years. Unlike Amanda's performance, James's remorse seemed authentic. What changed, James? Just finding out I have money now? He winced at the directness of my question. I deserve that. But no, it is more seeing you tonight, how you handled everything with such dignity. How respected you are by your staff. It made me realize what a shallow life I have been living, measuring people's worth the way my mother taught us to. The admission surprised me. That is quite insightful. Coming from someone who once told me my career choices were embarrassing to the family. I was wrong, he said simply. I judged without understanding, and I regret that deeply. As the evening progressed, I found myself in a surreal position, observing my family from a new vantage point. Eleanor had smoothly pivoted to introducing me to her friends as my brilliant stepdaughter, the CEO, as if she had always been my champion. Amanda continued her campaign to establish herself as my devoted sister, though her eyes betrayed calculation rather than affection. My father moved between groups, looking both proud and disoriented by the evening's revelations. Several times I caught him watching me from across the room with an expression of wonder, as if seeing a stranger who resembled his daughter. What struck me most powerfully was the contrast between these relationships and those I had built in my professional life. My interactions with Michael, Thomas, and other staff members were characterized by mutual respect and genuine regard, while my family connections remained fraught with hidden agendas and unresolved hurts. As the celebration began to wind down, I found myself at a crossroads. The truth about my success was now in the open, forcing a recalibration of family dynamics that had remained unchanged for years. The question was whether these revelations would lead to healing or simply new forms of dysfunction. As the last guests began to depart, leaving only family and a few close friends of my father, I found myself at the center of attention in a way I had never experienced with my family before. Various relatives who had barely acknowledged me earlier in the evening now approached with warm smiles and questions about my business. I handled each interaction with grace, but maintained a certain reserve, unwilling to pretend that years of distance could be erased by the sudden discovery of my financial success. When an elderly aunt who had never shown interest in my life before gushed about always knowing I would make something of myself, I simply thanked her and moved on. My father approached as the room emptied further, looking tired but more at peace than earlier. "Would you stay a while longer?" he asked. "There is still so much I want to know about your life. Your work." Of course, I agreed, genuinely wanting this connection despite everything. We found a quiet corner table, and for the next hour, I shared stories about building Skyline Hotels from its humble beginnings to its current success. I told him about the first struggling property I purchased, the months of hands-on renovation work alongside contractors, the nerve-wracking wait for the business to become profitable. "I had no idea you were going through all that," he said with genuine regret. "I wish I had been there to support you. I learned to rely on myself," I replied honestly, "and to build relationships with people who valued me for who I was, not what I could give them." "Like I failed to do," he acknowledged. "We cannot change the past," I said after a moment. "But we can decide what happens next." We were interrupted by Amanda, who approached with a determined expression. Throughout the evening, she had made several attempts to establish herself as my close confidant, each more transparent than the last. "Catherine, I have been thinking," she began without preamble. "My friend Cecilia is launching a luxury accessory line next month. Having someone of your stature at the opening would be invaluable. We could attend together, make it a sister outing." The calculation was so obvious it was almost pitiful. I met her eyes directly. "Amanda, let us be honest with each other. We have never been close. Finding out that I have achieved financial success does not change our fundamental relationship." Her smile faltered. "I am just trying to build bridges. We are family, after all. Family is more than a biological connection, I replied. It requires mutual respect and genuine care, neither of which has characterized our relationship for years. So you are going to hold old misunderstandings against me forever, she challenged, her true colors showing through the veneer of sisterly affection. I am not holding anything against you. I am simply being realistic about where we stand. If you want to build a genuine relationship, it needs to start with honesty, not networking opportunities. She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it again, perhaps realizing that further pretense would only make her position more transparent. With a tight nod, she walked away, joining Eleanor, who had been watching our exchange with narrowed eyes. James approached next, his manner more subdued than his sister's. That could not have been easy, he observed, nodding toward Amanda's retreating figure. Honesty rarely is, I replied. For what it is worth, he said quietly, I think I understand now why you kept your success private all these years. It was never about the money for you, was it? No, I confirmed. It was about building something meaningful, something that reflected my values and allowed me to make a positive impact. I admire that, he said, surprising me with his sincerity. My life has been about chasing external validation, trying to impress Mother's social circle. It has not brought much satisfaction. It is never too late to change direction, I suggested. He nodded thoughtfully. Perhaps you are right. After a pause, he added, I would like to know my sister better, if you are open to that. The real Catherine, not the version we created in our minds. His request, unlike Amanda's, seemed to come from a place of genuine reflection. We could start with coffee sometime, I offered. Small steps. As the evening finally drew to a close, I found myself alone with my father once more. Eleanor had gone to see off the last few guests, giving us a rare moment of privacy. Catherine. I know I have no right to ask this, but I would like another chance, he said, his voice uncharacteristically vulnerable. Not because of your success, but because you are my daughter. And I have missed too many years already. The simple sincerity of his request touched something deep within me. I would like that too, Dad. But it needs to be on different terms than before. I understand, he nodded. No more allowing Eleanor or anyone else to come between us. No more measuring worth by status or possessions. Exactly, I agreed. And it needs to be separate from any family dynamics with Eleanor or her children. Just father and daughter rebuilding. I would like nothing more, he said, and for the first time in many years, I felt a genuine connection to the man who had taught me to ride a bike and read me bedtime stories before life had pulled us in different directions. Later that night, after everyone had departed and the hotel staff were clearing the last of the celebration, I returned to my office on the top floor of the building. The space, with its panoramic views of the city I loved, had always been a sanctuary where I could reflect and plan. Thomas knocked gently on the open door. Everything has been settled with the event, Ms. Mitchell. The staff did an excellent job, despite the unexpected developments. They certainly did, I agreed. Please make sure everyone involved receives my personal thanks and the appropriate bonuses. Of course, he nodded. If I may say so. You handled a difficult situation with remarkable grace this evening. I smiled at his tactful reference to the family drama that had unfolded. Life rarely follows our carefully laid plans, Thomas. The measure of success is how we adapt to the unexpected. After he left, I stood by the window, watching the city lights below. The evening had been a powerful reminder of the journey I had traveled. Not just professionally, but personally. I had built Skyline Hotels on a foundation of authentic values and relationships, creating spaces where both guests and employees felt genuinely valued. In contrast, the family dynamics I had observed tonight were built on appearances and conditional acceptance, creating connections that fractured under pressure. The revelation of my success had forced a reckoning that was perhaps long overdue. My father had glimpsed the possibility of a more authentic relationship. James had shown signs of genuine reflection and growth. Eleanor and Amanda had revealed the transactional nature of their worldview, measuring relationships by their potential benefits. As for me, I had finally stopped seeking validation from people who had never truly seen me. The little girl who had longed for her family's approval had grown into a woman who understood that true worth comes from within, from living according to one's values rather than others' expectations. The path forward would not be simple. Genuine change rarely happens overnight, and patterns established over decades would not dissolve with a single revelation. But there was possibility now where before there had been only resignation. I would continue building my company according to my vision, creating environments where people felt valued for their contributions rather than their status. I would give my father the opportunity to rebuild our relationship on more authentic terms. I would remain open to James's apparent desire for genuine connection while maintaining healthy boundaries with Eleanor and Amanda. Most importantly, I would remember that success is not measured by wealth or recognition, but by the positive impact we have on others' lives and the integrity with which we pursue our goals. As I finally prepared to leave for the night, I took one last look at the cities spread out before me, a tapestry of lights representing countless individual stories intertwined with my own. The journey had not been easy, but it had led me exactly where I needed to be. Have you ever been underestimated by family members only to prove them wrong later? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. Sometimes the sweetest success is showing others that their limited view of you was completely wrong. If my story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more real-life experiences about overcoming family expectations. Remember, true success is not about impressing others, but about living authentically according to your own values. Thank you for listening to my story, and may you find the courage to define success on your own terms.